Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the Corbett Report. James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com, coming to you in January of 2025. And first things first, a housekeeping note, there will be no subscriber newsletter this weekend. I'm sorry, I have just been absolutely overwhelmed preparing the 8th annual Fake News Awards, so I have not had time to write my weekly editorial. My apologies for that, but as way of concession, I want to post something up that you may not have seen before, although it has been posted to the Corbett Report before, but you may not have seen it, and I think it's highly relevant. And we're going to take our lead for this flashback from the Corbett Report archives from an interesting thread that was developing on the New Year Open Thread and Subscriber Video 2025. For people who are not following along at home with this New Year Open Thread, you'll see there are now 224 comments from the Corbett Report commentariat on all manner of subjects. As usual, it's a wild free-for-all with all sorts of links and things being posted. And if you sign in to the website as a Corbett Report member, you can see the aforementioned subscriber video as well. But if you scroll through this thread and you're following along, and there is a lot of information, as I say, on a lot of different subjects, but you will come across an interesting little thread that I saw develop here. It started with Lisa J., who was talking about some Solutions Watch, etc., and said, I also recently enjoyed the recent Roundtable Elon Unmusked interview and shared that out to a few places. The recent Roundtable Elon Musk Unmusked interview, which I must admit, when I first saw that, I thought, what recent Roundtable? I don't know that one. And C06 asks, well, can you share the Unmusked interview link here? And so Lisa J replies with a link to Jason Bermas's Rumble channel, Elon Unmusked, Corbett Webb TLAV Broze Ultra Panel. And right, exactly as it says here, there is a roundtable panel that was posted up to the Bermas channel that involved me, myself, Ryan Cristián, Jason Bermas, Derrick Broze, Whitney Webb. Yes, we were all there, but the thing about this is you might notice this was posted 2 years ago. So that's the first thing. Recent? I don't know how you define recent. I guess on the geological timescale is very recent. But the thread then continued with M. Key saying, I believe James intentionally does not add some of his interviews to the site because he expects people here to get their news from various sources. It's true, I don't post every single interview I ever do up to the website. It would consist of hundreds and hundreds of interviews if I did that. So, no, I don't post absolutely everything I ever do up here. Hopefully the things that I think will be interesting to my regular viewers and listeners. And then C06 replies, not sure if I got a different link, but it's probably not on this site because there's no Corbett in this roundtable. Just some edgy super cool dude called Johnny YouTuber. And yes, if you do go and watch this, you will find that I adorn the Johnny YouTuber persona for the purposes of this conversation to defend Elon Musk. Ha ha ha. Anyway, I hope you have seen this, because it is not a new conversation. It is a couple of years old, and although there was a lot of talk about why I didn't post it to the website, I guess no one actually did the test. Did you type Musk into the search bar and scroll down all the way to the fourth result? Johnny YouTuber defends Elon Musk. Yes, I did post this to my website on January 14th, 2023. Here it is. Here's the Derrick Broze Conscious Resistance channel version of the video, but it's the same video, the same roundtable. I posted the audio up here and posted Broze's video. And links to his channels and all the people involved in the conversation. So it already was here. I'm not sure what the confusion was about and not sure why it's being brought up now, other than the fact that in 2025, people are finally on a larger scale starting to question this Elon Musk character who has been paraded before them. First, as some sort of liberal eco-crusading savior for the lefty side of the fake left-right wing bird of prey equation back a decade ago. And now for the right-wing dark MAGA version. Hey, he's a super cool based memer guy who is making brain chips and working with the Pentagon and creating mRNA vaccine microfactories at Tesla, etc. But don't worry about that guy. He's on your side. But he says something about H-1B visas and suddenly, whoa, maybe Elon Musk is not who we thought he was. Shocked Pikachu face. Well, anyway, as you know, I've been talking about the technocratic huckster Elon Musk for years now, and I'm glad people are finally catching up, and apparently just finding years-old conversations that I had on the subject, so I thought, why not repost this video here for your edification and enjoyment while I'm busy working on the Fake News Awards. They will be out soon. I can't promise a date. I'm hoping towards the end of the month. At any rate, you will see them when they are ready. And in the meantime, enjoy this roundtable.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze, the Conscious Resistance Network, and I am here with a lot of amazing people. And I just want to say real quick before we introduce everybody, we're going to spend about an hour talking about why you shouldn't trust Elon Musk if you happen to. I reached out to everybody here. I know that each of them has done different work talking about Elon Musk. The reason I think this is important as we're in 2023, the beginning of the year, is because there are a lot of people in our spaces and in our communities and people who follow our work who are falling for the Elon Musk deception in one way or another. So I figured we should try to get ahead of that because we've seen this happen before with Donald Trump and other people. Why not try to do our best to spread factual information and maybe plant some seeds of doubts in the minds that are trusting this man? So that's why we're here today. I'm Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. Let's go around and get to know everybody real quick before we get started.
I guess I'll jump in. I am Jason Bermas. I do a morning show now, 8 to 10 a.m. Monday through Thursday. Also a documentary filmmaker. I've been talking about Musk, transhumanism, and his military-industrial complex ties, amongst other things, for some time now. Ryan, I can't hear you.
You're getting it right there. Always classic. I'm Ryan Cristián from The Last American Vagabond, founder of The Last American Vagabond. This is such an important conversation. I'm glad we're having this. And I definitely think that, all of your work here in this room has helped to guide my perception of this as well. And I think this is, my big thing, I think is just about the kind of retraining us how to engage in this journalistic practice, like through intermediaries, but obviously the Great Reset and everything else that this ties to and all the inner working pieces. I'm excited to talk about all this with you guys here today. So looking forward to it.
Okay, so hi, I'm Whitney. I have a website. It's unlimitedhangout.com. I also write for Ryan's site. We'll be doing more of that soon. For those that don't know, I've kind of had some time off because I wrote a long book and it broke my brain. But, it's working again to talk about why you should not just not trust at all Elon Musk, but really you shouldn't trust any big tech billionaire, period.
And
probably the broader
I am
theme.
James Corbett of the Corbett Report. But for the purposes of today's conversation, I am Johnny YouTuber. All right, let's crank this up because this is going to be a super boring conversation because we are all on the same page. We all agree Elon Musk is as phony as a $3 bill. Elon Musk is phony as a $3 bill. Don't trust him. So I'm going to be the devil's advocate, and I'm going to argue for Elon Musk in this conversation.
Love it.
Wow.
Hey, that's cool.
That's a wild card.
I actually thought about inviting somebody on here who actually does believe that, but I wasn't sure how brutal that might be. One of our mutual friends out there. So we'll just let James stand in for him.
I'm willing to bet James is going to be more objective with his faking that position than somebody who actually holds it. That's just my opinion. So
all right. Okay. Well, I'm going to just throw it out to you, Jason, because you have done a lot of work in the areas of military contracts, SpaceX. So, maybe we could start there and see where it goes.
Yeah, all right, let's first start with the fact that Elon Musk is the number one defense contractor in the country right now. Now, that's on a multitude of different levels, and then he checks every single Klaus Schwabian box you can imagine. So, just to run through some quick things. During the COVID 1984 nightmare, this guy increased his wealth by over 600%. Okay. He beat out Bezos, Gates, Buffett, Page, Brin, and everybody else. How did he do that? He was sitting there talking about free speech and all this stuff. Well, number one, he was still ramping up Starlink and the Blackjack program, which is the classified Starlink for space warfare and other maneuvers via the military. But number two, Tesla's not a car company. Okay. It's a propped up government funded organization that also prints up mRNA shots via CureVac. Also with the Optimus robot, which automation is coming. And right now, when I talk about Starlink, the highest concentration of dishes in the world is in Ukraine, where they are also hooking up to Ghost and Sidewinder drones. This guy is a cookie cutout and was literally prophesied as the man of the year as he pushed the sustainability agenda, a $15,000 trailer pod home. So I don't want to hog up too much space here really quickly, but there are even more examples of this, especially when you get to human brain interfaces and Neuralink, which is DARPA tech from now 50 plus years ago.
I think for me, this is one of the strongest points. I'm just going to say I'll start with specifically from a libertarian perspective, because that's a community that I've associated with over the years, that anybody who considers himself a libertarian or even a conservative, let's say, people who are usually argue against corporate welfare, subsidies, people getting help from the government. It's clear that Musk's just so much of his career, there's good articles out there literally listing all the different subsidies that his companies have gotten from the governments, and obviously the military intelligence connections. I feel like just anybody hearing this who likes Elon Musk for one reason or another, that if you stand anywhere on other grounds about standing against corporate welfare, that should be on principle one reason not to support this person, not even getting into some of the deeper things, just on the principle of his company and their practices and their corporate welfare with the U.S. government. What do you think, Johnny YouTuber?
Okay, yeah, all right. But an oft-repeated libertarian argument is that, look, the government's taking your money anyway, so you should take the money from the government that you can get from them and then use it towards good things. And isn't that what Elon Musk is doing? He's sending us to space. We're going to Mars. And, okay, there's some NASA military things, but that's the ball game you got to play at that level. But he's using it for good. And let's put it this way. Yeah, brain chips. What's the libertarian position on brain chips? If you want a brain chip, should someone come in and be able to stop you from taking one? Of course not. So they should be available if you want to take one. It doesn't mean you have to take one, right? It's just he's making that option available. And how else are we going to beat the machine takeover other than by joining the machine? I mean, we have to become one with the AI consciousness in order to not be swept under the rug of history. So, look, you don't have to agree with me, but you can't stop him from doing what he's going to do, and saving free speech while he's at it.
Let me just jump in on one point, and then people can deconstruct some other ones. This idea that you should just take government money and that you're using it for good is laughable. Once you have this outwardly fascistic partnership and you're working with the Defense Department has no reason, no legal liability to tell you or anybody else the truth. And when you are working with weapon systems, you are using money not to empower, but enslave humanity, especially when we're talking about autonomous drone warfare. So that's absolutely ridiculous. By the way, we're not going to Mars. I have the chief scientist at NASA repeating on multiple occasions the first things that will supposedly go to Mars are going to be nanobots that then survey the area. They will bring that information back. They will build a virtual world, and you will be able to visit it, Johnny YouTuber, in this virtual era that they create. So I'm sorry, that is incorrect, sir.
Well, on top of that, I think so. The World Economic Forum overlap and the Great Reset direction with Elon Musk and all the things. Everyone's seen the videos and the comparisons. They're all fantastic points, and it's very relevant. But it always comes down to choice for me, right? As Johnny YouTube is pointing out, well, shouldn't people have a right to make these choices for themselves? And that's kind of what Jason's touching on, is that obviously that's not really the premise here. They're already arguing that this is a moral obligation, that we have to do this, otherwise you're killing grandma, or whatever narrative we're sticking into this. Oops. And I think that's the important part of this, is clearly it's about them. This is an idea being forced upon the people. So those things obviously don't connect. But the bigger thing to me is, obviously there are people that, as YouTube guy is pointing out, that there are people that would want this direction. But the issue is how all of the people right now, in my mind, the biggest current problem that are pushing back against this, largely, I would argue, in the two left-right paradigm, the right side of the argument, are right now being manipulated with Twitter files, Elon Musk, and the whole thing, in order to get them, and I argue, to go in line with this new direction. And this is something Sam Husseini and I had a conversation about, that he ultimately calls Trump the opposable thumb of the establishment. Not necessarily because Trump's aware that he's being used, but rather that Trump's actions, especially if he doesn't know, are being used to drive people into it. For instance, saying we shouldn't be funding NATO, and now we're funding NATO more than ever in a general sense. And so this is where we see, and we discussed this, and I agree, Elon Musk playing a role in this same way, stepping in as the new Trump 2.0 concept in Twitter. And all these people are kind of rushing in behind it and seeing him as this new savior figure, whether it's just journalism, which is like the current obvious point that's being discussed, or whatever comes next. Because I think we're being trained in a very alarming way to take at face value what's being presented. And I think again, the biggest point is where this all goes. The Great Reset, the overlap, the transhumanism, right? That's where I want to get into when we get there, the Neuralink overlap with the injection research and going all the way back to Charles Lieber and all this stuff that seems to be going in a very alarming direction. There's a lot in that point there, but I think it all comes back to how the illusion of Elon Musk is being used to let all of this happen without people really pushing back against it. At least that's how I see it.
If I may chime in, I would like to put forth a theory. It's just a theory. But I think Elon Musk was sort of chosen long before the Twitter takeover to be sort of a personal savior figure to at least a segment of the population. And I think you can see this in his connection to the Iron Man movies. And I personally have never seen them because I don't really watch new movies. But I think actually not Johnny YouTuber, but James Corbett did a piece on Elon Musk, right? And in there he gets into some of this. Talking about how Robert Downey Jr., as part of that movie, modeled his character after Tony Stark, modeled Tony Stark after Elon Musk. And this was made more explicit with his cameo in like the second movie and whatnot. But so Musk is a Pentagon contractor, right? And was at this time. And then the Pentagon had significant contracts with the Iron Man movies, like totaling in the millions of dollars. I think it's very possible there was some sort of effort here to have, like Jason pointed out, the number one defense contractor be seen as like the guy that's going to save us all, or as like a trustworthy figure that's doing all this innovative, upstarting, game-changing technology. We should trust him because he's like a superhero, right? And that idea of a personal savior, I would argue, is super culturally ingrained in Americans, and it's beyond the United States as well. And that Hollywood is a longtime driver of this stuff. The military, the CIA, all of these organizations interface very intimately with Hollywood as a means of propagandizing the population. And why wouldn't they use Iron Man like that? And why would they want this Musk Iron Man connection and to place like Teslas in the movies and all of this stuff if they didn't want certain people watching that stuff to associate Elon Musk with this cool superhero scientist guy that's doing all this cool stuff, and he's saving the world. Avengers, guys.
Yeah, no,
franchise.
That guy's a schmuck. As someone sent that Elon Musk technocratic huckster episode to John Bush, and on Facebook he said something like, "There's nothing new in here, or nothing I haven't heard before. Therefore, it is just nonsense. Who cares? Whatever. Yeah, Iron Man. That was a decade ago. None of that really matters. The point is, Elon Musk is the cool billionaire. He knows how to troll people on Twitter. And he is saving free speech. I mean, have you guys been reading the Twitter files? Come on.
So let me jump in here again. Have to. I'm sorry, Johnny YouTuber. But you're talking about how this guy is saving free speech. Well, anybody who's following along, even with the regular narrative on all of social media, they weren't making it a secret. They had teamed up with authoritative sources and the World Health Organization that doesn't have our best interests at heart. Number two, we still have no WikiLeaks type dump of any of the information that is out there that, although is good, is extremely limited in its scope, with names like Dan Bongino and Charlie Kirk that literally have millions of dollars behind their brand and product. And that's not to even come down on them, because at least Kirk is talking about transhumanism and but at the same time lauding Musk. You have to let them do something that is already obvious. And let me say this. These are Trojan horse civilian systems that have a plausible deniability circle in what they do. So Twitter still is openly employing former CIA, NSA, and FBI at the highest levels. We have still not seen the algorithm. Narrative management is absolutely still a thing there. And we should see all the documents since its inception and them working with the Department of Defense. And I want Johnny YouTuber to understand NASA is a part of that Defense Department. And to kind of get into where I want to go, and I want to ask Ryan about this, the aspect of these mRNA shots, again, that were scaled up by Tesla, supposedly this guy's company, and he's got so many. You talked about it, Johnny YouTuber. He's got time to tweet all day, and he's running Tesla. He's running the Boring Company. He's running SpaceX. It's magic. I mean, how's he doing all this? Well, the bio-nano era, according to the chief scientist at NASA from a future strategic warfare document, okay, right here, supposedly they knew in 2001, this is pre-9/11 in July, that bio-nano era would happen in 2020. No matter what you think about the shots, how they're the best thing since breakfast, or the bioweapon come home to roost from DARPA itself, billions of people took them in 2020. The next deal is the virtual era that I'm talking about. And the World Economic Forum, Davos, has essentially partnered with the metaverse. Last year, they had 2 forums on it alone, and it is the new global push because, Johnny, we're not going to Mars, but you might think you will if you take a brain chip.
Let me add one thing in real quick. A great conversation here. I popped on screen a moment ago. I'll show it again. This article, I'll put this in the description. If anybody needs to learn more about what Whitney was talking about, the relationship between the Marvel movies and the military, Pentagon. And yeah, I mean, this is a regular kind of relationship. In fact, I cover this in The Pyramid of Power for anybody who hasn't seen it, thepyramidofpower.net. Chapter 4 is all about the Hollywood military intelligence complex. And this has been going on for some time. So I would ask you, Johnny YouTuber, to really, when you're watching those Marvel movies and you're feeling so great about Elon being there and he's here to save the day, to recognize the relationship that everyone here is pointing out to. Where should we go next? What do you got? What's your other reasons for liking Musk, Johnny YouTuber? Is it his entrepreneurial spirit?
He's single-handedly contributing to the underpopulation problem.
Well, you know what? Let me briefly hit that.
I'm sorry, contributing to fighting the underpopulation problem. Sorry, I got that.
He's got a lot of kids apparently, and some we might not even know about. And he's one of the few people out there that openly discusses the idea that overpopulation is a myth. He's given the bowling ball reference, right? He's
right about that. You can't deny it.
I won't deny it. And there's another guy that says the same thing, and it's Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil says that we've only used 95% of renewable land has not been used, and that basically by 2030, renewables, solar in particular, harnessing only 1/10,000th of that, will be able to distribute the populace wide, give us all the energy we need, and use the quote-unquote metaverse and virtual universe to our advantage. He says that overpopulation is a myth. Everybody else does it that's employing Musk, including the people at NASA in this document that actually talk about world population stabilization, the author of which I have in 2011 talking about population control that changes everything. It's also in this document. They also talk about taking hold of the genetics, the genomic code of the human species, and directing it in any way they want to. And when I say they, again, this is NASA. It's the good people at a space agency, supposedly. However, when you look who else is involved in this document, Musk has kind of echoed the same thing. When you start augmenting human beings with supposed AI hookups, who's writing the AI? Garbage in, garbage out. I would encourage people to go check out The Limits of Growth by the Club of Rome. No matter what data they put in, it was population collapse. But they still want to invoke this idea that we're destroying the planet. NASA very much behind that as well. And that's the excuse to bring us in from the bio-nano era that they've started injecting people and normalizing mRNA. Let's not forget, Moderna had no products at all. They partnered with DARPA in 2013. Okay. In 2016, they patented a drug that has a 12-sequence DNA nucleotide identical to the virus. And then their one product on the market is the COVID mRNA shots, which is CRISPR tech. All right. And on top of that, the one that their CEO is now promoting is one for heart attacks. You can have a heart attack, then they're going to just directly inject the mRNA into your heart. How convenient. And it's hilarious because the guy interviewing them points out that, boy, that's great that you made that possible. You didn't have any products on the market, and the only one that's driving that financially is your COVID vaccine. And I have to sit in la land and act like that's a good thing, Johnny YouTuber. I think there might be a little bit more than a coincidence there when you're talking about billions of dollars and the Defense Department.
Sort of like Narcan and the opioid crisis. This is something we've seen before. You know,
let's jump to the AI, the transhumanism thing you want to talk about, Ryan. I know you wanted to get some, and I want to get Johnny YouTuber's opinion on this because I wrote an article recently for TLAV about the Neuralink presentation that Musk gave, and they showed the whole fake brain getting the 64 threads in the brain and all this stuff. And the main reason I wrote that article is because anyone who talks about it, they just hear it's going to help blind people see, it's going to help paraplegics. But when you actually listen to what Musk said in that presentation, he said what he's said before, which is that we need to deal with AI rising up and, maybe seeing us as useless. And the best way to do this is to merge with it. He said something to effect that night. The best case scenario is that we get a benevolent AI, and then at some point we merge with it and we go along for the ride to see where it's at, right? So his vision is very much like Jason's pointing out, merging with the AI, transhumanism vision. And again, I do believe people have bodily autonomy and the right to do so if they want, but I don't think they really know what they're buying into. I'd like to hear from Johnny YouTuber first, and then Ryan, I know you got some to add to this.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, let me set the record straight on this vaccine stuff, because I don't know what planet you're living on, but the planet I'm living on, planet YouTube, I know that Musk has spoken out against the lockdowns and the COVID restrictions and everything since the beginning, since March of 2020, when he was saying that the coronavirus panic is dumb, or whatever he called it at the time. And I know that in September of 2020, he said that his family wouldn't get vaccinated because they weren't at risk of COVID. So there's that. Now, I know in December 2021, apparently he did say that he and his children had been vaccinated, but he had to say that because he was getting bad press at the time. So don't think too deeply on that. As to the machine upgrade interface, I mean, what's the alternative? Are you just going to sit there while everyone else is getting shipped? And what's that going to make you? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you're going to be so outdated, you're going to be left behind. The robots are going to finish the job and to just take care of the non-upgraded humans. So I think gotta join them to beat them.
Well, obviously, choice is the main point. You can't really argue against somebody saying we should have a choice to be able to take that route. Again, the point is that this is something that's being thrust upon the population without, under a guise that it's the right thing to do. But the big issue for me, and I do want to make sure we get back to the Twitter files at least at one point, because I wanted to talk about that. But the very alarming overlap here, and this ties in with everything we've just talked about, the brain machine interface, the mRNA injections, how all of this ties back, and the alarming overlapping research going back to Charles Lieber, when he in 2011 discovered the lipid nanoparticle acts, the way to encapsulate these things in fatty lipids and able to inject them into cells, and ultimately making virus-sized transistors all the way back then. And then that very research being connected with the concept of finding ways to, give amputees the ability to move arms again, or, Parkinson's disease, and all the same stuff we're hearing from the Neuralink overlap, except the research there was the same stuff we're now acting like was the saving grace for the mRNA injections. Interestingly enough, on a side point, was the same thing they continue to do, increasing lipid nanoparticles in the past, which is why they continue to fail. Nobody explains why doing the same thing today suddenly succeeded. But my concern is how these things overlap with the idea of right now what we're pushing with the brain-machine interface and the lipid nanoparticles, the nanotechnology within these, and the big open question on top of all of that about whether or not there are other things in these injections that we don't know about. Now, I was very resistant to this in the beginning. I guess not resistant, but very skeptical. And I think we've continued to see more and more high-level, very credible people begin to poke at this. Doctors, scientists, research groups saying we're finding things in this that we can't explain, whether that's graphene oxide or something else. I don't know. But the point is that we do have research going back as far as you want to look, as far as they've been researching this kind of technology, saying that graphene oxide vaccination was the future. That's just one part of it. My point is that nanotechnology, the connection to the injections, the connection to what they're doing with the mRNA, with the brain-machine interface, and every direction that Elon Musk is taking this it's impossible for me not to think that there's an overlap with the agenda and how that's being driven. And then again, with the guys of Musk being in this position, and as Whitney pointed out, prepping this for a long time before this, and kind of lulling people into a position where we accept that if it's coming from Musk and his associated companies, then it can't be bad because he's on the right or whatever the argument becomes. Now, there's a lot of unknowns in that big discussion there, but I think the problem is very obviously that, one, the mRNA injections are clearly failing. I mean, obviously in a catastrophic way and hurting people. And I wonder, and this is actually something Whitney and I have talked about a couple of times, whether this in part was itself a test to try to achieve something, whether that's to suss out how this works properly, or maybe execute some kind of an experiment to find out how these things, map out the human brain, meshing things. I mean, we've talked about the reaching the singularity. There's a lot of possibilities to flesh out, and there's scientific research to back up these exact directions. And then I guess the final point to add to that would be them routinely discussing between about 2017 or even before that, up until right before this started, what they call moral bioenhancement from a compulsory level, forcing people to do this because they've decided it's the right thing to do without you knowing about it. So, I mean, all those pieces together, it's kind of hard to doubt that this could be something much more alarming than it looks like.
Okay, so the thing I have to say about Neuralink is the following. So according to Neuralink itself, 8 out of their 23 monkeys died after getting the brain chip. Yeah. If you believe this other watchdog group, it was 15 out of 23. Whoever you want to believe, if any product like device, medical device is seeking FDA approval, and in your animal trials, 8 out of 23 die, are you going to send that to human trials? If 15 out of 23 die, are you going to send that to human trials? Probably not. But because of what's happened over the course of the COVID crisis, we've, seen a total gutting of any sort of illusion of government, regulatory stuff for products, particularly medical products. It's the FDA that also approves medical devices. And what do you know? The current head of the FDA is Robert Califf, a former Google Health executive, who's all about approving all of this transhumanist medicine where you're basically seeing big tech and big pharma merge with each other. And that's essentially what I think we're seeing here. So it seems like it's going to get greenlit. And this 2016 act, the Cures Act, removed informed consent from medical device approval processes, technically for things that have a minimal safety impact. But I mean, they're so corrupt, they could argue that even though, 15 or 8 out of the 23 mice died, I just think that's a really high number. Would you want to sign up for a medical trial where your chance of dying is that high? Or would you send that to the next thing? Is that what, a super benevolent billionaire like Elon Musk would do just to make the blind see, even though there's a bazillion videos of him being talking about commercialization of that and how it's...
Okay, guys, come on. Look, I know you guys don't spend all day on YouTube like I do. But the latest YouTube challenge is called the Shallow Water Challenge, and it involves diving into a pool filled with 6 inches of water. My grandma tried it recently, and she's now a paraplegic. So she can't type, and she's trying to text me all day, but she can't type. So Elon Musk is going to help my paraplegic grandma type again. And you guys want to come in and stop that from happening?
All right, so let me break
For
in.
shame.
All right, because the first thing that I'm going to tell you is, number one, this idea that we're going to get left behind. There are plenty of human brain interfaces that are already available and being utilized by the military that are just wearables. So, for instance, you have now swarm drones of these small drones that are semi-autonomous, but are literally being guided by a soldier's thoughts. If you want to see where the technology is and where they want to take it, there is a great RAND piece that they have out there, Brain Computer Interfaces, U.S. Military Applications and Implications, and this looks to 2040 in the future. Right now, we talked about NASA. According to Dennis Bushnell, same guy behind the document, same guy who's the chief scientist right now, same guy who's been around since the Gemini days and has a slew of patents. He says in 2018, there are 200,000 people already with the brain chip, not the Neuralink brand. You can read about one of them here that isn't using it to walk again, okay, isn't helping grandma. No, it's just helping depression. And by the way, there's a new one out today I covered on my show. You can tell that she's over her depression because she's alone in a garden, heavily obese with a mask on her face. It's obviously worked. I think the main thing that we have to realize when we're talking about transhumanism, it is two different things. And going back to what Ryan said, the possibility of different things being in the shots. Okay, first of all, we have a multitude of batches. We have a multitude of types of shots. You have the mRNA, which was Moderna, but you also had the vector-based shots that were out there. And you also had those trials. Remember, they were warning about possible false HIV in Forbes. You think that I'm making that up. It was literally a mainstream article. And then it happened. And those were with the non-mRNA. So they're, outwardly, there are different things in the shots. But they, again, when I say they, the Defense Department doesn't have to tell you anything. The Defense Department is allowed to lie. It's called classification. Okay. And this is the partnership that they made. It's called Adept Protect. I'm glad to see people like Peter McCullough finally talking about this. But it was against contagions that they would identify, and then they would produce an mRNA spike protein within 2 or 3 days, right? Very quickly, whether it's a bio attack, by the way, it says diseases that are engineered biological weapons, weird. And then you print up the mRNA, which Musk did, because he's the best. He scaled that up for Tesla. But there's a lot of partners and strategic collaborators when it comes to mRNA. Good people at AstraZeneca, you might have heard about them. Merck, Vertex, BARDA. There's DARPA, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Karolinska Institute, and the Institute Pasteur. All great people. Once you start taking this on and you work with them, there is a classification process. And as we saw with MK Ultra, what? Universities and private pharmaceutical companies worked hand in hand with them. And we still don't know a multitude about that. So, I think it's here. We're in the bio-nano era. They are running experiments, but transhumanism, guys, it's two different things to them. Okay, so there's the transhumanism they want for us that they run the experiments on, right? Because biologically, they think they're going to live forever. People like Jared Kushner have openly talked about it. And in fact, I would argue that people like Martine Rothblatt, for those unfamiliar, this is the person who wrote the book From Transgender to Transhuman. And in the very beginning, talks about billions of sexes. Guys, LGBTQ plus has a long way to go, I promise you. This person wrote the book Unzipped Genes in 97. And in this, it advocates for no more nuclear family, no more natural birth. They're taking hold of genetics. And if you want to have a kid, also the head of United Therapeutics that's doing xenotransplantation and printing up organs. So they want to biologically live forever. The rest of us get the brain chips and the virtual universe, and eventually the idea as we create entities that are very human-like, okay? The singularity, the age of spiritual machines. You're dumb enough to upload your consciousness to this virtual universe, aka you don't have a soul. That's not a real thing. There is no God. You're another number. That's it. That's what this all is. And I'm not a part of that. I know I went on a little rant here, Johnny YouTube, but I'm Team Humanity.
You wigged out conspiracy theorists. You're always talking about the end of the world, robots and stuff. We're here to talk about the Twitter files. What's going on? Come on.
Real quick before we get past it, Jason and I had a really great conversation about that exact point. I don't know if we're going to get into it today, but it's an important conversation about whether or not the trans overrepresentation is really about normalizing the next logical step of transhumanism. It's an important conversation because I think overlap is impossible to miss. And I think one of the main points is that you only have a small fraction of the population that's representing a very large portion of policy. And there's something to that, I think. And, then we got the fourth industrial revolution and merging bio and, everything they're talking about. Like, it seems to be that exact direction.
Let me jump in just really quick on that. Because, we can't marginalize that the person that wrote that book, okay, you can get all these on Amazon, by the way, From Transgender to a manifesto on the freedom of form. Okay. This is, again, the virtually human person and unzipped genes. You know who writes a forward to Virtually Human? That is, of course, Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil heads up the immortality division at Google. All right. Again, Google and the Defense Department, they're the same thing. They work with NASA on quantum computing. That's AI. And then they work on immortality with Ray Kurzweil. So Martine Rothblatt, hands down, is the richest, most powerful transhumanist, aka transgender person on the planet. There is not another. This is a multi-billionaire that headed up Sirius XM and wrote a lot of the lawfare regarding satellites. So when the most powerful transgender person on the planet is writing these books and founding these companies and actually doing it, I don't know. I'm paying attention. I'm connecting the dots. I'm not Columbo, guys. I'll admit it. He's probably better, but give me a break.
Well,
Ryan,
go
ahead, Whitney.
Well, I was just going to say, to take the conversation back to Elon Musk about transhumanism, I would like to point out that a lot of his narrative, I'm not sure if it came from here, but it's the same narrative and he funds them. So at Oxford, there's the Future of Humanity Institute funded by Musk. And they're the people that run that are the ones that have argued since, I guess, 2007 or so, that we have to merge with AI to beat AI. Like it's, inevitable, the inevitability reasoning behind this, but I forgot the other thing I was going to say. So the Future of Humanity Institute shares an office with the philanthropy, the effective altruism group that was basically running Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. So and then you have the weird overlap there with how the Center for Effective Altruism also basically was very involved with the financing of Event 201 through the Open Philanthropy Group and Dustin Moskovitz, Facebook co-founder. This is basically a mafia of big tech people who are obsessed with this and want to take it there whether they like it or not. So for example, let's talk about Elon Musk and Epstein a little bit, since he's another transhumanist, right? But it's also relevant to this big tech idea. Elon Musk is the guy that allegedly was introducing Jeffrey Epstein to Mark Zuckerberg at these Edge meetings. Edge was John Brockman, the publisher's, meeting of important minds in science and culture that was basically a front for Epstein. He was basically solely financing it for a long portion of its existence once it started hosting something called the Billionaires Dinner, which had the founders of Amazon, Google, Elon Musk, of course, being Tesla, SpaceX, and all these other companies. And they're all, hanging around together. And Elon Musk and it's worth talking about his brother for a little bit as well. So his brother ended up dating a woman in Epstein's entourage, one of Epstein's girlfriends. And this led to Epstein getting a tour of SpaceX in 2012. So Kimball Musk is on the board of SpaceX and of Tesla. He's also a young social entrepreneur for the Schwab Foundation, the Schwab Foundation being the foundation of Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, and apparently potentially blackmailed by Epstein to some extent. No one likes to talk about Kimball Musk for some reason, but he's definitely worth looking at when you consider this, oh, I'm Elon Musk and I'm introducing Jeffrey Epstein to Mark Zuckerberg stuff. And then you also have, as I noted in my book, one of the major suppliers to Tesla is a company called LS Power, which has direct links to ASA Properties, which is the realty company that's run by Jeffrey's Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, and owned the apartments where a lot of the sex trafficking activities in New York City were ongoing. So, there's some odd ties there that speak to intelligence ties here. And one of the main drivers for most of the past 20 years, and arguably much earlier, of a lot of these technologies that are leading to transhumanism, it is the military intelligence industrial complex, 100%. And, speaking again to this, specter of intelligence ties, I would say is the Starlink stuff. So somehow Starlink, against the will of the Iranian government, became active in Iran. So what does that mean? that means that, and Elon Musk promoted this, by the way, that it was in there. So that got in by one of two means. It was smuggled in either by US or Israeli intelligence. And so Musk is an accessory to that, so it's there's some interesting stuff going on there. Is that the guy you want making the chip that goes in your brain? And then again, to bring this back to what I mentioned earlier about him sort of being a construct. If you think about him just being a billionaire in general, most of his companies wouldn't exist without massive government subsidies. I mean, he's a guy basically created by the money from that complex. And then he's swimming around with a lot of these people there and has a lot of the same ideas. And maybe he can have that same type of I guess let's call it a social bond that Trump had with his supporters, because he's like, look how funny Trump is because he made fun of Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio on TV. I mean, yeah, that's cool because they both suck, but that doesn't mean like Trump's policies are going to be great, right? It's entertaining. It's a circus. And so like Elon Musk can do all of that. But I think, again, he was primed for this personal savior role. He was primed to be a billionaire and do all these other things. And like I said on a recent podcast, it seems to me that a lot of the Twitter file stuff is very similar to what happened with a few years ago with Pierre Omidyar in The Intercept, which effectively laundered Pierre Omidyar's intelligence-linked reputation and sort of recast him of this guy that's going to protect adversarial journalism. And then The Intercept basically becomes a honeypot for whistleblowers and sends 3 of them to prison, even though it was supposedly, founded to establish the Snowden links, and then doesn't publish 90% of the Snowden links and blah, blah, blah. But it sure made Pierre Omidyar look good. And same thing with Elon Musk and the Twitter files.
Right.
But like Jason said, he's still employing a lot of these same intelligence guys. He has his own intelligence connections, and he is using Twitter to feed the AI. And he also is a co-founder of OpenAI, which has just put out this Chat GPT thing, where people are interacting with AI more than ever. The brain chip is the next step, but we're already through this viralization of things like Chat GPT. We are interacting so much with AI. It's learning from us, but it's also manipulating us. The more people that come to rely on that, like kids at school is becoming a controversy with that particular thing, that feed questions into it and like use it for their homework and all that stuff. They're reading these ideas put out by this AI, and it's basically over time can be used to manipulate their thoughts and persuade them. Who is this being programmed by? And is AI starting to modify us before we've even merged with it? Yeah, I think it's getting to that point, because think about how, over time, as these convenient technologies over the past 100 or something years have emerged, humans become increasingly unable of doing that thing. Before calculators, more people did mental math. Now there's a calculator, and you never do that kind of math in your head or on paper anymore, right? And it's harder for you to do it. Well, what happens when the AI starts to speak for us because it knows us so well? Why do you think Elon Musk acquired Twitter and, has stuff in OpenAI, and he's, we have to merge with benevolent AI? He's going to create it. And if you think about this whole idea of data as the new oil, whoever becomes the owner of the most data is going to be the guy that's on top. He's going to be the Rockefeller of the data era as opposed to the oil era, right? And that's exactly what Elon Musk is setting himself up for, 100%. And that's part of why when he bought Twitter, he's like, this is going to be the everything app, like WeChat is in China. And what do you know? The parent company of WeChat is a major investor in Tesla and one of their most active shareholders. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to turn it into WeChat. The national security state, by the way, wants to merge with China's national security state. And they said so in 2019. So, US WeChat, China WeChat. Yeah, it's going to take over your brain. That's what they want. Anyway, sorry, I'll stop.
If I could add just one follow-up point, since Whitney, that was so important what you just outlined there, Whitney. And I think it was
kind of long. Sorry.
No, it's so very important. Derrick, if I could share this, what I have pulled up here. So this is just to make it more clear what I was saying, because it kind of was hollow without what she was talking about in the bigger picture, is to realize that what she just described there, it overlaps with Charles Lieber's research, which is the basis for the mRNA injections. So think about what she just said there and how all this is overlapping and driving us in the same direction. And just to make it all the more clear, this is from 2019 talking about the coming brain and machine interface. And it simply says at this 2016, the conference, he says a human's wrist being treated like house pets and by AI machines, what we're already talking about. if this wasn't built. He says, quote, I love that the idea of being a house cat, but what's the solution? Blah, blah, blah. The point is, it talks about effectively merging with AI, and then it references in the article Nature, literally a quote from Charles Lieber and the research he did, which is the basis for the lipid nanoparticle injection concept with the mRNA. And it says, we're trying to blur the distinction between electronic circuits and neural circuits, said Harvard research, another overlap, by the way, with Epstein, Charles Lieber, who co-authored the study. We have to walk before we can run, but we think we can really revolutionize our ability to interface with the brain. And finally, technological developments mean that we are on a path to a world in which it will be possible to decode people's mental processes and directly manipulate the brain mechanisms underlying their intentions, emotions, and decision. That sounds fantastic, right? And then obviously this was just what I was referencing before in 2011, literally building machines that operate like biological things because they're so small. Okay, that's that point showing ultimately that this is a very obvious overlap to the brain-machine interface, the whole agenda, all of it. And I just don't think, I think that's so relevant to the fact that we're being played, which we can bring back to Twitter files if you want to, how this is right now affecting people's mindset. And I'm so interested by the fact you brought up the AI chatbot. I haven't done a lot of research on that, but it's so interesting to see how that
the AI chatbot, it's all going viral so that you use it.
Right.
And people are like, oh, yeah, I got to check this out. It probably never even went viral when they first reported that. They just want to like herd people in.
It's probably all manufactured.
Data to it. Yeah.
The last thing
just like I think the art AI too. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah.
I was just going to say.
No,
sorry, go ahead.
We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left, and I want to respect everybody's time here.
I do
real quick, Jake. Real quick, because we just got like 10, 15 minutes left here, and I want us to try to convince Johnny YouTuber a little more. I know we want to get to the Twitter files. I want to mention the YGL, but go ahead and go mention what you want. But let's make sure we have time for Twitter files, and I want to mention the young global leaders.
I just want to say, when we talk about who programs the AI, if anybody saw the Emeka Christmas message, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's not really AI. It's scripted. But then when you talk about injectables, it already has a name. Okay, this is that human brain interface document I showed you from Rand. Another DARPA program, the next gen non-surgical neurotechnology. These are the injectables. It says that it can use transcranial magnetic stimulation to control soldiers through waves. This is not science fiction. So I just want to reiterate that, the human brain interfaces that Musk is providing right now or putting out there, that's just the consumer product. A lot of these technologies are already well beyond that. And when we talk about these programs, you talked about his partnership via the Defense Department. They started weaponizing space in the early 80s, and it's Lockheed Martin that they partnered with. And that's why Musk is so rich. This is a DARPA program. They have a ride-along program. Anybody can look into the Mandrake satellites. But then they also use Musk via SpaceX to move military cargo anywhere in the world within an hour. And whatever that military cargo is, you would imagine in many cases it's either if not all, are weapons and communications systems. And what do weapons and communication systems do, Johnny YouTuber, in times of war? They kill people.
Anything to say about that, Johnny YouTuber?
Okay. Guys, baseline, let's be real. This technology is coming. In fact, a lot of it's already here. And you ain't going to stop that just by wishing it away. So we need a good guy on the inside pushing against these elites. And look at the people who are lining up against Musk now. Look, in addition to YouTube, of course, I also check the front page of Reddit every day. And boy, do those Redditors hate Musk right now. Man, he is owning the libs just like Trump owned the libs. And he's going to change the world and bring down the elite just like Trump is going to change the world and bring down the elite.
Just want to point out that you're also going to get flavors of brain chips. Bezos and Gates are backing Synchron. They're promising the same thing as Musk. They're going to, make you not paralyzed. And by the way, I watched the presentation. It was laughable. Basically, you had the brain chip and then you had a chip in the spinal cord of a pig. And it's really not much different than those experiments that were going on via MK Ultra and Delgado and the electrodes that he had in a bull. In other words, they were able to stimulate neurons, but I wasn't impressed with it. And that's the other thing. I think that Johnny, YouTuber's alter ego, has often pointed this out. There's a lot of promises, almost over promising, and we've seen that generationally. What's really being delivered here? Is it really going to
Tesla bot? Come on, it went like this, very awkwardly. You weren't impressed by the Tesla bot? That took billions of dollars.
I was impressed by Johnny YouTuber. The promise of human beings being able to do whatever they want and have whatever they want. That was the main takeaway. That was the quote of the day from Musk when he was showing you an unnecessary humanoid robot. Okay, that's powered by what? The same software that Tesla self-driving cars are. Okay, and whoever programs that AI, it's not going to be.
By the way, if you haven't seen that 8-car pileup that the Tesla caused recently, you should check it out.
Was that the one last week or the one before that, or the 13 before that? Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not making that up. Every other week we see a Tesla crash. Go ahead.
Hey, well, Ryan, let's jump into the Twitter files since we're low on time. Let's see, and we can start with you and whoever else wants to add in. Can you convince Johnny YouTuber out there why the Twitter files don't, automatically prove that Musk is on our side?
Well, I think what's important to point out is that, what's happening right now is completely undefined. It hasn't been fleshed out yet. So if your mindset is that this person is saving free speech, then ultimately you don't understand that you haven't seen the full picture yet. And you don't understand that multiple people have yet to be reinstated, and multiple people that he promised would be have not been let back on. And many people have been censored since then, both conservative and Democrat or whatever, liberal. The point is that he hasn't fulfilled literally any of the promises he said he was going to do when he brought this on. As Jason pointed out, where the algorithm has not been released, we haven't seen the source material. We have even the basis of letting people back on who were censored under the ridiculous COVID-19 misinformation policy hasn't actually happened. I know numerous people that still haven't been let back on. All that being said, which should be enough, by the way, to make clear that at the very least, he hasn't fulfilled what he said he was going to do. That what's happening right now with the Twitter files is a dangerous aspect of how they're trying to reframe our understanding of journalism. CJ Hopkins put out a great article both on his Substack and Off Guardian yesterday and today called I think the mother of all limited hangouts. And it's really, even if this is true information, which I argue most of what's being shown aligns with things, one, we've already proven, two, things that I think I already agreed with before based on other research, or some of the things we haven't proven. But overall, I agree with what it's being shown. But if you don't have all the information, if you don't have the full picture, you are being manipulated. And this is important, especially with true information, because you don't know the context. It's so easy to lie to somebody with limited truth. And that's what they've really banked on in a very obvious way for a long time now. This is what I think a lot of these limited hangouts are in corporate media. Like, honestly, as much as I still think a lot of information comes out through this, things like Tucker Carlson or a lot of things on CNN, they drip out half information, usually true and usually rooted in something you can find, but that's where it stops. People look at the screenshots, they look at the breakdown, the text that they've been given, and that's where they leave the investigation. That's a lot of people that go along with that. Go ahead, Whitney.
So I think if you remember to like 2021 and pretty much, after 2020, a major theme of the World Economic Forum was how do we restore trust? So I think there's all sorts of people that have been trying to cook up different ways to get different segments of the population to trust certain people. And I think Elon Musk is, I've already been saying it, but is definitely one of those. And when it comes to the Twitter files, like you said, it definitely appears to be very limited hangout-y in terms of what it's revealed. And a lot of it, if you were following different outlets or certain, parts of independent media, you probably already knew a lot of this stuff. Like, okay, yeah, that's nice. It's been confirmed. But again, we don't have source material. But one of my concerns too is that, like I said earlier, I don't think it's just about, I think part of it is that it's a laundering of Musk's reputation as this sort of, savior figure role that he was, I think, prepared for. previously, but I also think it's about, sort of laying out I don't know, like legitimacy, giving legitimacy to the journalists that are engaged in it, when people should be using a lot more critical thinking when consuming their media, regardless of who it comes from. But I think, someone like Barry Weiss, who is basically an Israeli government lobbyist, and most people before this knew her best for her appearance on Joe Rogan, where she says stuff about Tulsi Gabbard that she later can't defend and has like a really awkward meltdown, basically. So now she, as the Twitter files come out, she launches a new website, and they have a bunch of subscribers right away, and are rolling the money in Substack, and some of these people are, basically mainstream adjacent journalists and very gatekeepery. Matt Taibbi definitely falls in that category. I think the New Yorker was saying he was making like over $1 million a year on Substack, which is pretty impressive, but still that's cushy. Yeah. And he was previously hired by Piero Midyar as part of this thing that happened with The Intercept. He ended up not working for them. But not because he was opposed to working with some, tech intelligence linked billionaire. And he's been very vocal about how if you believe in any quote unquote conspiracy theory, you're to use his terminology, dickwad. And this includes things like, not just 9/11, but, not believing the official story about the Kennedy assassination, which, has essentially more or less openly been admitted that the US government had a, culpability in that, the intelligence complex. No comment from him on those new revelations. So I don't find the Twitter files to be particularly convincing. And at the same time, it's sort of reduced because a lot of the Twitter files reporting, particularly Taibbi, it was paywalled. Investigative journalism is being reduced to Twitter threads.
Exactly.
And being, it's this very restrictive microblogging word count. As someone that regularly churns out like 10,000 word articles, you can't put a lot of good information in a thread. There's a load of stuff you have to leave out. And if you want to try and put it all in, good luck trying to get most of your Twitter audience reading like a 60+ tweet thread. Right. I mean, it's
my
not
biggest
going to happen.
Is that people will go forward from this. And I even argue that they're probably going to at some point make sure we understand that what they showed was true and there is source material in order to make people trust the process. That's just a thought that I had, because ultimately, if you're engaging with screenshots and the text as the full picture, you are going to be played going forward because you will trust this process. You're no longer asking for source. I mean, we've all seen on the internet right now, you're on social media, when you ask, hey, can you drop a link? You get attacked by 13 people. Like, what do you mean a link? Do your own research. And it's this weird pushback. And I think it's important that we hold to that classic tenet, right? And another thought that I actually had was and this is just a random thought. We've seen a lot of this awakening to a lot of different things happen, whether it's COVID, the Ukraine collapse narrative, whatever it is. People are pushing back in a lot of interesting ways. Maybe that was seen. I do think it's been long before COVID that people have been kind of coming along to this. I think the whole Trump thing was part of that as well. Maybe the idea was to put someone like Musk in this place in Twitter to then argue, because Twitter is clearly the local, the main spot that people are, this town square, whatever we want to call it. So when people start pushing back on the narratives, it becomes very clear on Twitter that people are not trusting what's happening unless they can go, oh, that's all the right. Twitter's now the right. It's all been taken over by the right. Therefore, it's not actually the truth. It's just a bunch of conspiracy. So they can effectively sidestep everybody realizing what's happening on Twitter. Just a thought. But there's a lot of ways. I see Johnny shaking his head. What do you got? Go.
Well, let's start to wrap up. I want to hear from Johnny because I know it's already the middle of the night for Whitney. So, wow.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Just start
Derrick.
making our final statement. I'll go ahead and. Am I cutting out? Was I cutting out there?
You're good.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I was just saying, let's make our final statements, and I'm going to start real quick and see if we can convince Johnny with these final thoughts here. First off, Johnny, young global leaders, you got to go back to Bloomberg, March 2008 to see this. Young global leaders with Anderson Cooper, Leonardo DiCaprio. Do a quick search. Elon Musk, the chairman of Tesla Motors, the much publicized electric sports car company, is a new YGL. Not really discussed very often beyond the one other point I'll make real quick, just my final thing here. It hasn't been brought up tonight, but he also is alleged to have said, as the screen shows.
Well, he definitely did say it because it was a tweet he deleted.
Right.
And,
You're cutting pretty hard, Derrick.
Broze is
some of
cutting
those-
pretty hard, so I'm
He did.
gonna jump in.
I want to show the guys. You got me now?
No, you're still bad. You're still absolutely terrible, Derrick. I hate to tell you, I wish I had better things.
Well, seeing as how we're towards the end, let's give Johnny YouTube a chance to
Yeah, Johnny
report,
YouTube. Let Johnny
you know?
YouTube.
You know, guys, all I've heard from you tonight is facts. Facts, 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 facts. My feelings don't care about your facts, okay? And I feel Elon Musk is based and red-pilled, and he's awesome, and he's cool, and he's going to the stars, and you guys just don't want to be on the winning team. I'm out of here.
Oh, good. Thank God. Here comes Corbett.
I don't know what that was about. Hey, James here. Hey, guys. Good job. Give me credit. I did the best I possibly could. But yeah, obviously. I think the more interesting conversation to have at this point would be, why do people who, whatever, normie, Joe normie, who cares, right? But people that we know are above that and understand a little bit about the way things really work, why do they continue to fall for these characters? And I've tried to address that in my work before. Go back to my hopium episode. I think it's equally as relevant to this conversation as it was to the Trump conversation. But why does it keep happening, and what psychological mechanism is being played on to get people to overlook all these facts because it doesn't comport with their feelings? That's really what the base of this is, because I don't know how you look at all of these connections and all of this and still say Elon Musk is one of the good billionaires. No, it's ridiculous. So anyway, I did my best, but there's no way to really defend Musk at this point.
Well, something that I think
Yeah.
let me start that over. So I was reminded, I thought of this while Ryan was talking. Basically, we know that at some point, the COVID crisis has sort of come and gone. It's very likely that in order to succeed in, Agenda 2030, the SDGs and all this other stuff they have going on, there's going to be some other shoe to drop. So if they're obviously publicly worried about public trust, they need controlled opposition figures for people to like, so during this period, so that when that comes, they can be herded appropriately. So, we're basically having I would argue, I wouldn't say a generation because I don't think it's that many, but a very significant number of people in the public eye, including in media, that are being set up to do that. So, we have all this stuff with the Twitter files going on. I already said my spiel about that, but you also have people like Jordan Peterson coming out and hanging out with like Netanyahu and then being like, yeah, we should get rid of anonymity online, which is a World Economic Forum policy, and like weird stuff coming out, of his mouth. And then you have various people in sort of that same media sphere being like, Neuralink's going to change the world all of a sudden. It's very weird to me and seems somewhat coordinated. Maybe that's a conspiracy theory, but I think there's certainly going to be an effort to sort of herd us in a particular direction. And another thing I want to point out, some people, well, probably you guys know, Jeremy Farrar is now in a couple of months or maybe sooner going to be chief scientist of the World Health Organization. He created something a year or so ago called Welcome Leap, where he teamed up with the DARPA director that green-lighted the funding, DARPA's funding for mRNA injections. And having him in that position and people like Robert Califf at the FDA, there is a major setup for this next pandemic or biosecurity crisis for, especially if these international health regulations by the WHO get passed, you're basically going to have the guy that made Welcome Leap, Farrar himself, dictate what countries have to do to respond to some arbitrarily declared public health emergency. And if you look at what Welcome Leap investigates and is investing in and their innovation and all of this stuff, and the lady they put in charge of it, who's been trying to spend her career fixing the mismatch between humans and machines, it seems like there's a lot of coordinated stuff to get people to trust this technology from all different angles. And, if there's too big of a segment population, at least in their opinion, opinion, that's against all this stuff. They need people to try and herd as many of those guys back into the corral, the transhumanist corral or whatever. Anyway, so those are the points I wanted to make at the end. I should probably go to bed. At least after
Thanks,
this.
Whitney.
Oh, Ryan, you're
Ryan, you're muted. If you want
muted.
to jump in.
It wasn't me that time, I promise. No, I'll jump on that in general and finish it from my perspective here. I think there's so many angles to this. It's so obvious that it isn't what it appears to be, at least to me. But I think that, obviously from just the journalistic perspective, the Twitter files itself are retraining people how to engage with what they're being told is the process. And that's alarming, especially for younger generations coming into this, and especially as this goes forward with whatever happens next. And I think that's, and then we can see how everybody involved is wildly benefiting. We have stipulations they discuss we don't get to see, one of which they have to do this through the Twitter sphere. And then we know that, there's lots of filters. There's the lawyers, there's the people involved, and everything's passing through filters. This is not free speech. This is not journalism. This is controlled release of information like we've seen on every other part of this. But all of this connects in that alarming way that we've talked about today. The direction of the injections. And see, for me, the point that keeps sticking in my mind is that obviously these injections have hurt a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of other arguments we can get into about, whether they depopulation or different things we could talk about, and it's certainly possible. But if we take that it just face value and it seems that it didn't work, the argument then seems to make sense that this was something that was trying to be done. That's where and this is just my opinion, but this seems like as we've talked about, or even as Jason was talking about, like not actually technically reaching the singularity, but pretending to. But we know that they want to reach that. So the point would be the question should simply be, what are they trying to execute with Charles Lieber's research, overlapping with the injections, overlapping now with the direction of Elon Musk, and what are they trying to do with all of this? And just be very skeptical about that. I mean, literally, you don't need any of that to be concerned about these injections. But I just think that how the bridge there between everything they're building around you right now, as we've called the technocratic panopticon, it all connects in a very clear straight line if you're just willing to look past what you're being told by the corporate media. So I'm glad we had this conversation. And as you all know, there's probably, 14 more hours of content we could pull out of this very thing. But I'm glad we had this conversation today.
Derrick, can I make one
Go
final
for it,
point
Jay.
as James Corbett?
Yeah, go for it, brother.
Okay, my final point for this conversation would be to say, it's interesting if you actually listen to this conversation, we are not talking about Elon Musk. We're talking about all the things that swirl around this cipher that is Elon Musk. I think in the exact same way, I keep going back to it because I think it's a parallel. People talked about Trump as if Trump was really running the United States of America and he was in charge of everything and blah, blah, blah. And everyone focuses their energy and their attention on that cipher rather than all of the connections and things that are really actually running things from behind the scenes. And I think it's obviously similar for Musk. Bermas, you brought it up before, where like Elon Musk is tweeting at all times of day and night as he's running the company, as he's running Tesla, as he's running SpaceX, as he's running the Boring Company, as he's running Solar City. He's doing all of this, I tell ya. Of course not. He is a cipher. And we can get drawn into looking at the cipher rather than the thing that it's trying to obscure, which is all of the connections and things that we're pointing out here. And I think that's what's frustrating for Musk fanboys, is that they are investing their identity in this person as if that person is really running anything or is really in charge of this. They are not. They are a serviceable puppet in a much bigger agenda who, at very best, I don't know the heart and mind of Elon Musk. Let's give him the total benefit of the doubt. He really is a good guy and he's trying to do what's best. It doesn't matter. He is being used by the military industrial complex and all of the other things that are allowing him to be in the position that he's in. And at any point at which he becomes not a serviceable part of that agenda, he can and will be thrown under the bus. That's what this is about. And I think it goes back to the same Trump conversations that I was sick of having for the last 5 years. Now we're on to the next iteration of that.
Wrapping it up, I couldn't agree more, James. I think that he's kind of a Bernaysian archetype. To be fair, he just had another record, lost $135 billion in wealth. And what does that do? That helps to bring the cult of Musk. Go, see, I told you so. He's just like me. He's couch surfing like Kato Kalin, according to the press, months and months ago. And let's not forget, he had Justin Roiland, the creator, one of the creators of Rick and Morty at Neuralink. So like, he's got to be a good guy. He was on the show. That's exactly what they're doing. People have to realize that benevolent billionaires are few and far between, if they exist at all. You got to take a look in the mirror. You got to be your own hero. Listen, you can look up to somebody. You can aspire to be something. You can set a goal for yourself. But at the end of the day, it's you and your loved ones. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just encouraging people to, question things a little bit more, have some discernment, and realize what you can do in your own life to make that life better. That's what's important.
Absolutely. Am I coming through now? Am I okay now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think that was a great place to end it, Jason. I'll just throw this on the screen because I didn't think it showed earlier. Whitney was right. He did tweet that we will coup whoever we want, deal with it, in response to people bringing up the U.S. government coup in Bolivia and mentioning the lithium batteries near there. Just want to make that clear. And we don't need to keep looking for leaders. We don't need to look for Trump or the next person or the Musk or the Kanye or whoever. That's the problem, is that people keep falling for these new traps. So even if nothing we said here convinced anybody and you still feel he's the best entrepreneur because he slept under the desk of Tesla or something, if that's even true and not a propaganda story put out there for you, even if you still feel that way, you can't deny all the other connections that surround this man. And ultimately, you don't need Elon Musk. You don't need any of these people. You can rule yourself. So with that, guys, thank you so much. Till next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.